Welcome to the Look Good, Move Well podcast.
We're kind of color coordinated right now.
We are.
Look at us.
That. FBB Banter, Part 3. How do you go about choosing your outfits for the podcast?
Oh, man. I overthink it way too much.
Really?
Well, because there are certain things you're supposed to do and not do on video, which probably the majority of people are not watching the YouTube video, but because it exists, I obviously have to show up for it and do my
we
best.
also do a little promo every time on Instagram with these clips.
Oh, yeah. We're on Insta.
Plenty of people see that.
People see the outfit. All
Yeah.
right. Well, you know, I try to avoid the bold prints because those don't show up on camera so well.
Uh-huh.
I try to avoid like straight black and straight white because they can make you look a little washed out. So, you know, like solid colors. I like a little structure in my outfit, like a little blazer always does me some good. So, yeah.
Structure. What does that mean when it comes to clothing?
Well, when it comes to clothing, you can have your leisure wear, your athletic wear, which is fabric that just moves about with your body. Mm-hmm. And then there's also structured wear, which has a little bit of tailoring, some seams, maybe a little bit of a shoulder to it.
See, I'm all about, like, I'm the structure. So I want that shit to just fit.
You yourself
so
are
structure. I thought that's what I was doing in the gym. Is building the structure.
Just building that structure.
Isn't that what you're doing down there?
That's what I'm doing. But
let that structure show. Get some more tank tops in here.
All right.
Okay. You want to know how I pick my outfits?
I was about to ask.
Really?
You know, what's your approach to fashion, Marcus?
My approach is grab a pair of Stance socks, a pair of Chubby's shorts, and a black shirt,
or an FBB shirt,
and then depending on how I'm feeling about my hair, put on a backwards hat or a headband, or just let it flow.
Yeah.
But no, I'm pretty much. I've been really, and this is going to tie into what we're talking about today. The wintertime's difficult for me because I'm like, all right, everyone's wearing pants. It's cold outside, coldish. And I have this like instinct to be like, I want to stay warm, be cozy. But I'm like, what the hell is that about? Like, why do I need to be cozy? Why do I always need to be comfortable? I think back to Bob McKenzie, Bingo McKenzie's father, gentleman that dropped his kid off at soccer practice every day with me for years. This man wore flip-flops, sandals, slides, whatever you call them, and a pair of short shorts every day without fail. It didn't matter how cold it was. And the guy used to swim under the Golden Gate Bridge. Oh, I think daily. He would go and do an open water swim, not in a wetsuit, just in a pair of trunks. That's cold, people.
Yeah.
Real cold.
Real cold.
And strong ass currents.
Yeah, hardcore.
This guy was just like, he was like my childhood Wim Hof. Like, I guess I didn't even know it, but he was just like out, and he was the most spunky, happy, you know, he had the loudest cheer for his "Go Bingo," you know? And I think there was something to that. So it didn't matter, you know, we'd have soccer tournaments in November, December, frosty on the ground. He's just wearing his shorts. Everyone else is bundled up and everything, and everyone would talk about it. Be like, oh, there's Bob wearing, you know, shorts again. Like, it's freezing, Bob. Are you cold? He was just, and so anyway, yeah, I've been wearing shorts a lot lately, and the people at Kid Pickup are like, what are you wearing shorts for? It's freezing. And I'm like, I know, it's really cold. I'm cold. And I'm just trying to get in the elements, you know? I'm trying to like let my body be exposed to more stuff. I mean, I go in cold plunges. Like, why do I need to put on pants? Like, I'm purposefully trying to get my body to experience some element in something cold and then something hot. Because most of my day, we're in this like mostly climate controlled space always, and it's comfortable. And when we purposefully get ourselves to some of these extremes, which we assume are discomfort, it's like, or we label as discomfort, there's positive benefits to that. There's like adaptations that are happening. There's signals, there's things that are happening in our bodies that are meant to happen, that are for your greater good.
Yeah. Well, that definitely brings us to the topic of the day, which is modern life and how we choose to navigate that in the health and fitness context, given what we know now and given what we have learned from generations of people who've gone before us.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of this discussion might be a little bit contradictory to how most people operate in the world, where we tend to seek comfort and we tend to seek the path of least resistance. And so I would like to just open this discussion with a little bit of framework of just being open-minded to looking at things in a different way, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I made two posts today that had that same kind of message. It was like, I invite you to challenge your thinking around what constitutes healthy food. Be like, this is what we've been told and what the modern assumption is. Maybe it should be different. Maybe it could be different, and same thing with, something feeling uncomfortable. It's like, just because it's uncomfortable, you're feeling some discomfort, don't assume that that's bad. Like, we're not supposed to be comfortable all the time, or we historically, we've not been comfortable all the time. And it's a result of the discomfort that, one, we adapt and get stronger and more resilient. And two, the comfort times feel that much better. I have seen, and personally, I have been in so many comfortable situations, like comfortable in quotes, like where I'm protected, I have enough of everything I could possibly need, I'm around, and I've been like unhappy. And it's like, I'm bored. I'm sad, I'm depressed. It's like, everything is great around me. Why am I depressed? Maybe because I'm not struggling enough to really be able to appreciate this good stuff. And this isn't going to be like an episode where I'm like, get out there and go, David Goggins, get into this shit and just, that's not what I'm saying. It's just that you kick this off. We're comfort seeking as a society. What's going to make it more comfortable? What's going to make it more efficient? What's going to make it more easy? How can I get the information to my fingertips more quickly? Like, how can I basically live in the metaverse where I never actually have to do anything? It all just comes to me through this, virtual lens where I can do anything and everything, and it's all right there for me, and I never have to move. And so much of recent history has been a big shift towards that.
Yeah.
And with less struggle and with things being more available and more easeful, how has that impacted people's fulfillment, their health in life? Are people getting sicker as a result of that? Or are they getting healthier? Is there more mental illness or less mental illness? Are people, thriving as much as we would assume they should be thriving with all of this technology and all this stuff that makes things easy and makes it comfortable? This also is not going to be a podcast about let's just throw out the heater and let's just live by fires outside and let's, but it's just when things seem, when I become very aware of something that feels like, wow, that's a big imbalance. Well, I wasn't really paying enough attention to that. I just like to talk. I want to talk about it. I want to share that with other people.
Yeah. Well, I want to bring in the training piece because I feel like this is a metaphor that can be helpful to start to frame this conversation, where within functional bodybuilding, we are very much about appropriate struggle, I would say, where you understand that you're going to come into the gym and it's going to be not that comfortable and you're going to strive, but you're also not going to kill yourself. And the intention is not to just like, I'm going to crush myself with every like waking second as I'm doing this. And then if we start to step back a little bit and look at training itself, it's like, why are we doing this in the gym? Like, why do we come to a room with weights in it and move them around and struggle? You know, like, what is that a representation of in our modern life? And, you know, based on how humans have evolved, like being in the gym has certainly not been something that's been necessary for us forever.
Right. Don't be long-winded, Marcus.
Here we go.
Be concise, for God's sake. Nate's looking at his phone. How much time? Oh, no.
How much time do we have?
Well, movement in the gym is our modern equivalent of moving to hunt or to be nomadic or to gather food or to evade predators or to fight other, you know, tribes and people, right? Like that was just part of the framework of how the human species evolved to the current day. It's like lots of movement. Some of it was very stressful. Some of it was very rigorous. Some of it was not so rigorous. Some of it was just going for a walk or covering, you know, lots of miles, just cruising or playing in the ocean or, you know, playing games, like whatever. But we're not forced to move for feeding, you know, for gathering, for, you know, we don't have predators, modern predators where most people live. So there's not that need to do that in our day-to-day life. So we recognize that without doing that, people got unwell. People got sick. People hurt. They got overweight. They had disease. They had all these things. And it's like, oh, but if you go and move in the gym, right, because that's what we have the modern equivalent, it's like, then you start to have less of that. So we had to that's why we go and move. That's why we're telling people to move. That's why we go and then how much do you move? How much are you supposed to, you know, struggle? How much is it supposed to be hard? Well, you say, well, you know, you had to hunt and chase down the thing, you know, every day. So go out and do something really hard every single day. Okay. That's one way of looking at it. But present day is nothing like those times, right? So, you know, if you had to go and sprint down the gazelle or whatever and, like, you know, pack hunt this animal, this woolly mammoth, like, okay, that was probably a really rigorous thing. And then what'd you get to do the rest of the day? You chilled out. You didn't have to go to the office under the LED lights and, you know, meet 10 deadlines. You didn't have to do that. You did your stressful thing, and then you went and ate and feasted and just kicked back and played and bonded with your friends and hung out. So we talk about stress and recovery. We talked about a couple podcasts ago. It's like, you got to have that balance. So how much you should come in and stress your body is dictated by all the other stuff that's going on in your life. And we're not, you know, I don't want people to think like functional bodybuilding is for people who want to just, like, you know, kind of do moderate intensity stuff. No. Like, functional bodybuilding is for you to come in and find your right dose of intensity and hit it every day. And my goal for you is that over time, you can handle much more intensity because you're taking better care of yourself, you're eating better food, you're having better relationships, you're sleeping better. And that, like, yeah, if life sets you up for it, I want you getting after it 90 minutes to 3 hours a day and hard charging it. And because you're balancing it so much. But when we started this thing, it was backwards. People were hard charging it and then going to the office and hard charging it and then going and drinking and then doing all and they were just getting overstressed and they didn't have balance. So it was like, oh, guess what? The best thing I can do for you is dial back your training a little bit and everything's going to feel better. And now it's like, okay, let's clean up all the other stuff. And then guess what you get to do now? You get to go ham on that workout every day. Because you're really, like, Marcus, you train twice a day, you do this. It's like, yeah. It's like, take everything else really, you know, I really dial all the other stuff in.
Yeah. What are some assumptions that you think people, or some things that people just take for granted about modern life that maybe we should take another look at?
Take for granted about Modern life, like things that are in the modern world that we're not taking advantage of, or things in the modern world that people think are good that are actually not maybe causing harm.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm getting at, because I just think of, when I think of the term modern life, I think of someone who is wearing clothing for comfort.
Yes.
And going to a cushy office job probably, and driving a car, and going to a gym, and I'm going to sweat for like half an hour, and then I'm going to go grab my like packaged food from the convenience store and like put it in the microwave and heat it up.
Yeah.
Like, what should we maybe be rethinking about some of those givens of modern life?
Oh man, when I think about it, it really, like, I'm about to say some things and I'm like, it makes me like have to take a much closer look at myself. Be like, man, this is just pervasive. It's like, I think the lack of physical connection with the earth and the climate and outdoors is massively problematic. I think, I'm like getting a little emotional thinking about it, but it's like that year, pandemic year, working out in the backyard every single day, being out there with my kids, playing in the dirt with them, like I didn't wear a shirt for like 9 months. I was just getting sun on me every day. I was like really tan. People were like, dude, your skin looks bad. And I'm like, feeling like self-conscious because like my skin's a little dry and I've got like, what do they call when you're like got the little lines, the little lines, and your
smile lines.
Yeah, I had a ton of those because I'm smiling a lot in the sun. So good for me. And now it's like I haven't worked out outside in months. I haven't really been outside in the elements. Like, that's bad. And I think about it every day that I'm in that office downstairs and I'm like, I need to be outside right now. Along those lines are these lights, screens. That is really something that I think we all can, way too far. Like, there's way too much exposure to artificial light, and then screens, and the things on the screen are being engineered to be extremely stimulating to our nervous system, massively stimulating. We are being stimulated at a level that is far exceeds anything that hundreds of thousands of years have been prepared for. And that is, I don't think any of us have any freaking clue what that's going to be doing to the long-term health and wellness of our people. I think that is a massive implication on mental health.
Yeah.
So those are just two that just jump to mind. And we're not even going to jump into the food thing yet, but oh man, those right there. It's like, I'm like, I want to just I don't even know. It's like I know where I'm at today. I know maybe what would be like the utopia, like, out in the sun, in the earth, like in the woods, like connecting with nature every day for hours a day, like not ever having a screen in front of my eyes after a certain time or maybe at all ever. And it's like, well, we run a virtual business. Like I'm working on a computer every day. Like we're in a gym filming content, and it's all with the intention of helping provide information and education to people so that they can better themselves. And so I can't just go off the grid and never look, at these things again. But it's a challenge, but it's something that, I also think like, okay, well, you're drinking, 5 Cokes a day. Well, it's going to make a big difference if you go down to 4 Cokes a day. That's going to help a lot. You're eating 400 grams of processed sugar a day. Well, let's take it down to 350, and moving these things a little bit. I'm an extremist. I want to do everything now and go all in. But I also know that, like, hey, the goal is not to go back to prehistoric times sitting by a fire. The goal is to live the healthiest, most fulfilling, optimized life inside the modern world, and then take full advantage of all the modern, experiences and comforts and relationships and things that can happen nowadays that could have never happened. Like, there's tremendous value in that. So, I'm just like trying to find that, where do we find that sweet spot?
Yeah.
But those might be two really valuable areas to look at for everybody.
Yeah. I think the word that's coming to mind as you're talking is intention, where instead of just floating along with like what you said about people commenting on your wrinkles or your crow's feet. That's the term.
Yes, that's the one, crow's feet.
The crow's feet. It's like, wait, why are we going along with the idea that that's a bad thing?
Yeah.
That you're like out in the sun, like having like a extremely like healthy experience of the pandemic, and we're like worried about your eye wrinkles because you're on Instagram. Like that is messed up,
Yeah.
And I think that when we get intentional about, here's our container and here are the wonderful things available to us, from being able to be more connected to people and being able to share ideas and being able to work really fulfilling jobs. And here are the things that maybe we don't need as much of, and can replace those with an intentional connection to nature or an intentional way of moving outside more. Then that starts to take shape more.
Totally. Yeah. Well, how about for you? Where are there areas that you see, or do you think about this? How much do you think about it? I know I've been talking about it a lot lately, and we could talk about why I've gotten so deep into it. But how about for you? What's your?
Yeah. Well, for me, I grew up in a spiritual community and spent actually several years doing some real intentional meditation off the grid, with no screens, for days at a time. And that is what comes up for me in the context of this conversation, and how when I have taken those intentional steps away from modern life, how rewarding that has been to just bring awareness to what I'm doing. Like, what am I doing in my life and the choices that I'm making? And when you do have an opportunity to step away like that, it really does help bring those things more into focus for myself. And I was thinking about how I have done fasting in a spiritual religious context, and how in the modern life, fasting is like a buzzword, like intermittent fast, like, do you intermittent fast, and like autophagy, and like, you know what I mean? And I just think that there's just a really valuable element to understanding the context of healthful practice, and the choices that we make around being like a person who is prioritizing health and fitness, and being able to look at everything on the menu of like how we're connected and how we choose to disconnect intentionally again, and then start to reorganize priorities from there. So that's how I start to think about it for myself. And one more thing is that I grew up before the internet existed, and I had a whole childhood before I got online, and I feel like that is something that I really cherish. Being able to, I literally would go outside to play until the sun went down. And it sounds like an old fairy tale now when I say that, because very few kids get to do that now. And there's something that feels like a loss in that for me.
I think for you and for a lot of people, I mean, I think I was kind of, definitely more of my childhood was spent on the pre-internet connected days. I think the internet for me really took deep hold in college, where that was like, it became a tool to accompany the learning, the academic, institution, and then also the social, framework of life. Facebook launched my freshman year of college, at select universities. I was one of them, Berkeley got on the early Facebook days, but I did have an opportunity to have some years before that. You talked about, I wanted to ask, like, you said I was part of a spiritual community. What, for people who haven't been a part of a spiritual community, what does that mean? How do you define somebody who's spent time? Because I think categorically it's like every spiritual group has something unique and different about them, but there's a few unifying concepts I think that would like qualify something as, okay, yeah, that's a spiritual group. How would you kind of generally talk about that to people?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because everyone is very different. My particular one is Anayatiya Sufism, and it's very, like, nobody's going to ever have heard of this thing, most likely, which is fine. But I think that the main characteristics that really stood out for me about that experience was that there was a connection to nature. There was a connection to breath and taking time to be intentional about your breath every day, meditation every day, prayer, and then sort of being in the flow of what the seasons and the occasions around that marked in terms of, I think about holidays, like there were feast holidays and there were fasting holidays, and there were times that marked significance throughout the year, at the solstice and at different occasions. And so just being in rhythm with the natural world and with, some aspect of the internal awareness that comes from meditation and from breath, and then understanding that all of those things are connected to our mortality and that our lifetime is finite. And so we have a choice about how we spend it.
That's so fascinating. To me, that I'm listening to that, I'm comparing it to my experience, the kind of like an 18 to 20 month period of my life where I identified as like, I'm part of a spiritual group. Like, I'm investing in my spirituality through this group, and we have particular values and things that we do and practice daily. And, many, many parallels to what you just said, from breath work to meditation to some bonding experience to singing, chanting, dance, very intentional about the consumption of food and, the thanks to the food for what it can provide us, and, fasting and silence, and then engagement and inward and outward and all that, like and then just being aware of that you're doing each of these things, to explore what that feels like, to recognize that has a different energy than this kind of environment or this type of activity. And that in each of those things, there's something that connects all the way back to like essential human needs and things that like our, early ancestors were exposed to or experienced in the natural world as they evolved, that created the humans that we are. So it's like a lot of these spiritual practices bringing us back to actual physiological states that our species is designed to experience. It's very fascinating. It's like, like modern day spiritual groups are just like rekindling, like, tens of thousands of hundreds of years of our history, like into like, how do we bring those elements into today? Yeah. And from, very different, what seem like on the outside different approaches, but the actual root framework of a lot of them is so similar.
Yeah. Well, are there any resources? I know you've been doing some reading and exploring some books kind of around these concepts. Are there anything that you would recommend to people?
Yeah. The one that I read recently was, I just finished it, was a book called Go Wild. And let me get that author. Go Wild by Yeah, John. Oh, I guess there's several. Oh, David. Let me actually pull up let me try and not start the actual episode.
You've got it right there.
It is right here. John Ratey and Richard Manning. Yes, Go Wild. Anyway, the book, Going Wild, sort of, the title is like, we look at like, there's certain wild animals out there and there's domesticated animals, and, drawing this like comparison between like, our wild ancestors versus like domesticated humans. We're domesticated humans who just learned to like have all these comforts, and that our wild ancestors, the ones that lived in the wild, that were part of the quote unquote wild, like just were out there in the actual elements of the earth and nature, surviving and learning things and developing solutions to problems that were in front of them, that innately had so many skills and, so much awareness and so much ability to kind of just interact with the natural world, that in the process of domestication or modern civilization, we've lost a lot of that information, or that ability to connect to the answers and to the solutions that are right inside of us. Just like, wild animals, like I don't know, the book starts out kind of drawing a lot of comparisons, but it's like there's things that just wild animals just know instinctively, brand new, just born, can go out and self-sufficient. Like, whoa, what the hell? Like, we are not capable of doing any of those things. We have to be coddled, and we have to learn so many things, and there's so much stuff that's just like a danger to us, anyway. Really interesting book, kind of covers a wide range of different, human behaviors and things that are going on that put a little context to like, what is modern doing to us? Like, how could it be impacting us from relationships to how we interact with our food, how we move our bodies, and what those consequences might look like on a health, from a health perspective too. So that was a book that I really liked, and some of the other ones I'm diving into are more food related, but save that for another one.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to add a recommendation, which is to go read some poetry by Mary Oliver, because pretty much everything she writes is my personal antidote to the modern world.
Nice.
She has a wonderful way of speaking about nature and qualities of presence and seeing and being that I find really refreshing and maybe would be helpful in the context of this conversation.
Love it. Well, anything else to add before we say goodbye today?
I don't think so. I think that this is just a fun topic to start to challenge some of our assumptions about how we approach health and fitness from a pop culture standpoint.
Totally. Yeah. All right. Well, as always, if you have questions for us or things you're interested in hearing about, make sure to tune in to the AMAs that we post onto Instagram. That's where we get a lot of these questions and content ideas for the podcast. You can always slide into our DMs and give us suggestions, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. See you next.